The diversity top cut continues here where, I mean, we're still seeing tier. We're actually kind of seeing some, that is Madolche actually. Okay, I like what I'm seeing here. Don't be like the 30% of you. Just smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. The Next Play weekly breakdown is here, and it looks like Super Heavy Samurai and, of course, Tier Elements are still fighting for that representation spot out here. Now, all jokes aside, I mean, Tier has done a fantastic job with still holding on with, you know, Fairy Tale Snow, and a lot of the other innovations that this deck has been brought to its attention at this point in time. And I think we're going to continue to see, you know, more of the powerhouse, you know, the little tech choices that this deck has had going for it continue on. Now, we also see here that we have Mathmech, Aluber and Friends, Kashtira, and Madolche all showing up as 2-ofs this week. Now, what I find most interesting about that is the fact that Mathmech has really had a huge presence in the OCG as of late, because circular OTK is absurd. Like, no matter how you look at it, being able to just roll through your opponent is so absurdly crazy. Like, and I mean, a lot of players, there's like real no counterplay to it. And I will say that, you know, even though Kashtira has been stripped down to like the former husk that it is at this stage, the deck is still doing relatively strong out here. One Unicorn, one Fenrir does not stop, you know, a Rise Heart Pass. A Rise Heart Pass is still pretty good. Now, I also see here that we do have Punk showing up as a 1-of, which is kind of cool. We had Adamancipator, which very interesting that rocks have kind of been stripped down to what they were, because rocks last format were one of the craziest decks that you could take into the room and actually have it work for you. And we're kind of at this stage now that it's just fallen off. I see that we are also kind of following up here with a Shaddoll deck. What? See, Dragon Maid up here, Marincess, Unchained. I see that we have a Labyrinth list, we have a Vanquish Soul list. Mid-range control Vanquish Soul was in a very interesting place because the deck could handle a little bit more of the explosibility that the format kind of had going for it, but on the dial back of power that we saw, you know, with the last list, Vanquish Soul, well, actually the release of Duelist Nexus, it definitely missed a note, that's for sure, but it can still show up and do things. Is that an Ice Jade synchro deck up here as well? I see Ice Jade. Okay, I didn't think that we'd actually see something like that. We had Ecclesia, so Dogmatica, and then we had Mana Diem. There's a couple of other lists on here that I'm not too familiar with, just looking at the pixelated pictures, but overall, extremely healthy metagame. This is by far one of the metas that I wouldn't feel bad about playing in, but I mean, it's not exactly Happyville out here, you know, having to deal with all the super heavy samurai. Like, the deck is already taking over in 2 formats. Now, your top 8 cut here is a little bit more meta-y at this point. We have double super heavy samurai for this event. I mean, Japan has been abusing the crap out of the FTK when it does show up, which is actually hilarious. The fact that the OTK version has, man, it doesn't show up as much anymore, but Super Heavy did have a very huge presence out of this top cut. One of the Mathmech players squeaked into top cut, which I think is very good here. The fact that we can actually see Mathmech OTK doing its thing. Despia also creaked in here. I mean, when you have one opening, one branded fusion, the deck is very much a former shell of itself. And trust me when I say this, I would love the deck to, you know, get back some of those cards that it's lost and step back up, but it's not in a good position. I also see that we do have a Rika Plant deck here actually doing well. As of late, Plant Anything has been a little bit of a silent sleeper. It definitely has been taking people a lot more off guard by what the deck can actually do. We also have Labyrinth up here. Hey, set a bunch of trap cards, win the game. Shocker, right? Like, the most ancient technology version of control in modern era Yu-Gi-Oh history. Yeah, set a bunch of traps. It's pretty good. Kashtira also squeaked into top cut here. I'm not surprised to see that this particular deck is doing things, because honestly, Unicorn and Friends still is really good. And we also have this Shaddoll version up here. Now, I don't have the Shaddoll deck list to show you what in the world is going on with this, But I will tell you, fundamentally, that out of all these, like, rogue decks on here, if they don't show up in the top cut, they lost in top 8. But it shows a lot of cool things really kind of going on here. So let's pass on over those top deck lists. Winning our event is the crazier version of Super Heavy Samurai. This deck is so good in the OCG. Having access to Scythe to be able to, you know, Dagda, pop interact. Oh my gosh, like, it is so disgusting. Of course, I mean, they're main decking the Archfiend Eccentric, I see. Their builds have focused a little bit more on seeing Phantasme play as well. But I mean, the fact that they do have access to Scythe has forced this deck into a much different direction. But you can see how a lot of the overlapping actually occurs between the TCG and the OCG versions. TCG's abusing Spell Canceller, while, you know, the OCG would rather just go lock the extra deck. Well, I mean, when you have the assets, you may as well use it. Also, no FTK inbound here, but they still are playing Masoro, so very interesting. And also, nice little Chaos Hunter down there as well. I like what we're seeing here in terms of this deck. Hand Trap City. Next up here is our other Super Heavy Samurai list. Now we're getting daring today. We're playing Mathmech in our Super Heavy Samurai deck. That way we can circular OTK our opponent. We're only playing one circular too, which I think is the wildest part about all of this. I guess this is one of those scenarios that if you see it, you're able to do your thing. I already thought that the extra deck was dangerously tight in this deck as it was, but the fact that you have to kind of tech in those extra slots, it does open up the door to show that, hey, you know, we can try these different lines of play, you know, the inclusions of these different engines to, you know, maximize some sort of results. And once again, I mean, that's what you're seeing here. You are seeing these engines come together here and actually work. So good stuff to see circular actually mattering out here in the grand scheme of this deck. And once again, you do see those Phantasmes down there actually mattering for the side deck. Next up here is actual Mathmech. So we've bridged the gap now from the other cheesy version that we're taking in to basic Mathmech at this point in time, where you do see the one Sakitama, the one Aratama in here. This has been a very famous version for this deck. The fact that you can go ahead and do all these little extension plays for this deck so that you can kind of set up and do your thing. Now, interesting enough down here is the Solemn Scolding actually kind of showing up down here. I've seen Solemn Scolding show up a little bit in the TCG, but it hasn't had a particularly, I would say, big impact as of late. It's definitely something that you want to kind of keep an eye on in terms of pickups. That's definitely for sure. But outside of that, Mathmech actually kind of doing some little interesting things out here. I'm very happy to see generalized results. So very, very interesting. And then our last list here is actually Labyrinth, sporting off a Tour Guide Farfa package in here. What? So, Skarm Farfa. Skarm searches for, well, Farfa searches for the Skarm. Are we using the Skarm as a spot removal card to make sure that the opponent can't actually do anything? That would have to be, like, the purpose of this, right? Because, like, I don't see any other reason for you to want to focus on that package. Like, it just doesn't fundamentally make sense to me to kind of push for that. Okay. Also, triple Cherubini. I guess being able to Cherubini drop, you know, one of your furniture pieces or something along the way that you would want access to would make this a little bit more interesting overall. That does actually kind of open up some interesting ideas to how you can kind of modify Labyrinth at this stage and try out some different ideas. Tour Guide, most of the TCG versions want to hold on Skill Drain, but I mean, with Skill Drain limited to 1 in the OCG, they don't exactly get that luxury that we've been seeing out here. So, okay. But outside of that, that is your next play breakdown out of the week here, and I'm not surprised by anything that I've seen here. I think that we're going to continue to see some more particulars out here as things kind of evolve with the formats, but from the way that things are looking, innovations are all over the place, but I think that's just fine at this stage. So please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.